Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, members, and welcome to the latest installment of our Wine Society online events. This evening, our focus, and hopefully you can all see this, is on our latest fine wine collection. My name is Gil. I'm one of the event managers here at the Society, and I am joined, as always, for these collection events by my ever-present and partner in crime, Ewan Murray. Ewan, good evening to you. How are you?
Gil, hello everybody. Hope everyone's well and raring to go for this excellent little six-pack that we're working with tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just also sorry, Ewan. I'm trying to see if I can spot what any of the books are in those bookcases behind you, but maybe throughout the course of the next hour, I'll be able to spot some I recognise. But members, yes, as Ewan referred, so for the next hour or so, we'll take a little look at this Christmas collection that's just launched earlier this month. We'll pick out a few of our personal favourites, wines that we love, sort of wines that we like to go for at Christmas time. But the majority of our time this evening will focus on that tasting kit, Ewan, that you referred to. And hopefully, I can pick out. I did put a little corner down. So we're looking at this page within the book where we talk about an introduction to fine wine. And we've created this wonderful tasting kit of six wines, 100 mils per bottle in here, or per pouch. Members, perhaps several of you are joining us with these tasting kits yourselves. Maybe you've bought the mixed case, the full bottle size, or one or two of the bottles, or perhaps even pulled something from your own wine fridge, cellar, whatever it may be that you have your wine racks. As always, we'd love to hear from you. Please do interact with each other and with Ewan and myself throughout the course of the evening. To do that, the best way is to use the chat feature here on Zoom. If you have any questions for Ewan or I, please do pop those into the Q&A tab, and please just mark those for the attention of Ewan. Ewan, if you wouldn't mind just answering any and all questions this evening. That'll be good. No, I joke. I'll try and answer a few myself as well. But it's great to have this opportunity to talk and to taste six wonderful wines that we class as fine wine. But before Ewan, I think before we start with the first wine, it might be good for us to kind of clarify how we define a fine wine at the Wine Society, and I suppose individually as well, because it is something that's a little bit different from merchant to merchant, from person to person. But I believe I'm right. Do steer me. But for us at the Society, and certainly me personally, when I think of fine wine, it's about balance. It's a wine that's got balance between its fruit concentration, its acidity, its sugars, its tannins, alcohol. Everything is in synergy. But equally, it's a wine that speaks of its place, speaks of the variety. It's got definition, purity. And only after all of that do I start looking at the price point of it. So it isn't really that the price, yes, it plays a role, but it isn't a case that every wine beyond a certain price is classed as fine. It's more the balance and that typicity. Would you agree?
Yes, I think you're right. I mean, commercially, a lot of wine merchants will say a fine wine is anything over X pounds, and at the Wine Society, I think we if we do have to put a label on it, we'd say probably anything over £16. But when you say anything, I think it has to be anything that is with those criteria that you've just listed. So no, I would agree. It's got to be something. It's a wine that's just a little bit special. I think we all know we know what the any day drinking wines we have, but every now and again what we pull out for a dinner party with friends who actually appreciate wine, that may be deemed as a fine wine as well. It's an I think everybody, not only every merchant, but every person probably has their idea of what fine wine is. And I do indeed know some people who will say fine wine, it's either wine or it's not wine. And if you're liking it, then it's fine. I'm not saying fine as in a okay way, but fine as in sort of an upper level. But everybody has their own different upper levels, I guess. So it's a tricky one to we could be
It is
talking about that.
But hopefully, with the six wines that we've got ahead of us here this evening, so two white and four red, we've got a wide range of regions, of grape varieties, of price points, and of course, stylistically very different as well. And this just really is a very small segment, a small look at wines from this collection. I've just seen in the chat actually a few members are asking what the book was that I just held up. My apologies. I do have lights on, believe it or not, but it's quite dark in this room.
In mine.
It's
There we
our, there
go.
we go. That's much clearer, at least for me. Yes. So it's our fine wine Christmas collection, which um, sort of released earlier this month, maybe a week or so ago, I think. But some absolutely terrific wines in there, as I say, over the next hour. We will dissect that a little bit. I know there's a few wines in there that you've spotted, Ewan, and there's a few that I've spotted too that may well have to grace my dining table or my home over the next few weeks.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so shall we start with the first wine?
Let's do so. I've got them lined up here, and I know that several people have said they've got the packs with them, and you may have a bottle of one or all six of them open. Who knows? But let's get going.
Right, so let me quickly pop the slide on. Here we are. So the first wine, as I say, the first of our two white wines, and we are very much with this pack looking at the classic wine regions. So we're all European. There's four from France, one from Italy, one from Spain as well. And we do kick things off with Sancerre in the heart of France, in the Loire Valley. And this is it on the screen right now. I will immediately draw attention, of course, to the fact that it has sold out, or it's saying sold out there. It is still available, of course, through the tasting packs that we're showing here. It's also in that mixed case, but sadly, in the individual bottle, it has proven to be exactly as we state there, a member favourite. So much so that it has now sold out. But as I say, if you've got the kit, or it is still available to buy through the pack as well, or the mixed case, there's a wonderful expression of Sancerre. So I'll move across to the next slide just to show a map before I talk about the producer, François and Jean-Marc Cherrier. Hopefully you can see this, Ewan, members, this map, but do tell me if not. But we can see here, this is a map of the Loire Valley. We can see that it's not necessarily long from sort of north to south, but it's incredibly wide. The difference between the very western edge in Nantes, there on the Atlantic coast in the west, to Sancerre, which is that circled area over on the far eastern side, is something like 250 miles. It's something along those lines, so sort of just shy of, what are we looking, 450 to 500 kilometers. So it's a very vast width, and naturally what we have here is a huge climatic differences across the region, different grape varieties, and different styles of wine completely. In Sancerre, where we are, we're looking at Sauvignon Blanc for white wine. It's a region that is predominantly white wine. Around 80% of all production is white. There are some red and some white, some rosé, sorry, produced as well, but 20% roughly, 19-20% of red, and then around 1% rosé. For both of those, you're looking at Pinot Noir as the grape variety there. Members, if you're fans of very clean, very pure, quite floral, quite elegant Pinot in both the red and rosé form, then I would encourage you to try some Sancerre Rouge, Sancerre Rosé. But they are that harder to find. But Sauvignon Blanc really rules roost here, although actually not for that long. It was only in the mid 20th century that's been the case. It was really a red wine area up until sort of phylloxera, that devastating louse that came and just wiped out the vineyards of Europe in the 1860s and beyond. When it came to replanting and grafting our European vines onto American rootstock, it was Sauvignon Blanc that really kind of took off and took to that better than any other variety. So it was really in the early 1900s that Sauvignon started to be planted and eventually surpassed all other grapes to become really the stalwart, the head honcho. But this is a wine. So from the François and Jean-Marie Cherrier, they're brothers who work with their father Pierre in the winery. As a family, they've tended vines since 1848 in this region. So they've been here for quite some time. They laid down roots over 150 years ago. But really, the estate as we know it was founded and established by Maurice. He was third generation in 1927. I think now François Jean-Marie is something, I believe, the sixth generation, or perhaps even seventh, alongside, as I say, their father Pierre. But all of their focus, they've got around 20 hectares under vine across five different vineyards in the Sancerre region. They're based in the small commune of Verdeny. And what's crucial for them, and certainly for this wine, and members, those of you who are familiar with Sancerre will be familiar with the variety of soils that they have there. We have these flinty soils that typically, I'm going to generalize a little bit here, Ewan, hope that's okay with you. But generally, towards the east of the region, where towards that the River Loire itself, we find more of those flinty soils that give us a bit more minerality in the wine, age worthiness, a preciseness, a lean focus. And then as we move from the town of Sancerre and between there and Verdigny itself, we have a little more kind of limestone, marl, gravel, these sorts of soils, which produce wines that are a little bit fruity, a little rounder, a bit softer in style. And then finally, as we move more towards the southeast and further away from the river and more towards the region of Mény-Tout-Salon, we have more of our sort of chalky soils, this commiserine soils, which no doubt you will talk about when you talk about the second wine tonight.
Mm.
It's a kind of continuation of those chalky crop that came down through what started, I don't know, in the White Cliffs of Dover even, but that south coast of England and through Champagne and Chablis, and we do see little bits of that in Sancerre as well. But what's beautiful about this wine is across their 20 hectares are planted different plots across all three of those different soil types. So in the wine, you get that wonderfully layered, complex character. You've got that mineral drive, that slightly gunflint, smoky character. You've got a round, more opulent fruit style. And then the chalkiness adds a bit of weight and a bit of muscle. And I just think this wine has got a wonderful nose. Sauvignon Blanc's a very aromatic grape variety, naturally high in acidity. They don't tend to see oak maturation or fermentation. It's not a grape variety that is synonymous with that. It kind of nullifies and neutralizes that wonderful energy that the grape has. But I think it's got a great vibrancy. For me, I didn't actually ask you before we went straight into this wine, but in terms of food pairings and this time of year, I go very traditional. It's not that I'm adverse to traditional styles or sort of classic pairings any other time of year, but I really knuckle down on classics, I think, at this time. So for me, when I drink this, I'm thinking crumbly cheeses, goat's cheese in particular, fresh, vibrant salads as well. Just work wonderfully with this, and a bit of seafood as well would go great.
Mm. I mean, there is as soon as I smelt it, I just thought goat's cheese. Is that automatic pairing? And I know that at lunch we were hosting a members' lunch earlier today,
Mm.
and it was used cheese. It was feta, but it was kind of, it was just there's some sort of aromatic within this that really goes with that goat or used cheese aromatic as well,
Mm.
and the acidity therein is gorgeous. And again, if you've got a cheese that has acidity as well, those sort of softer, crumblier, brighter tasting styles of cheese, then
Mhm.
it goes very well with that as well. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
delish.
I've seen here, Sauvignon Blanc. A man was just writing, not really my kind of wine or grape, too much acidity. Although I appreciate that this is a good example of it. I think that's it. Just again, because we label a wine as a fine wine, doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is going to enjoy it.
No.
It's all that personal taste. I really enjoy my Sauvignons that are a little bit more like this in form. I also quite enjoy it, if I'm being 100% honest, when it's blended with some Semillon, which does handle a nice bit of oak. So you get a much sort of oilier, waxy, honeyed character coming through that grape with that acidity and vibrancy of the Sauvignon. It works beautifully, whether that be from Bordeaux or further afield. But I love the depth. I love the complexity in this.
And it's more, for people who like their Sauvignon Blanc in a New Zealand style, whether it be the Netley or the gooseberry style or whatever. It's very bright and vibrant and in your face.
Mhm.
I really enjoy those styles, but I have to say that might be a one or two glass wine for me. If it's New Zealand, this is probably a one or two bottle, not just for me, shared with friends, kind of
Quickly
wine.
put that in there.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, but it's just, there's a bit more. I don't know. Yes, the acidity is there, but there's something that's just a bit more mellow and a bit more understated that I really enjoy about,
Mhm.
whether it be Sancerre, whether it be Puy-Fumé across the river, whether it be
Yeah.
the various coteaux around the place. I think it sits really nicely and neatly, and it's in a strange way, because of that mellowness, if you like. It's a really, whereas I would normally view Sauvignon as a bright spring or summer wine, but this one, I think what you were saying there about seasonal foods, I think this is fantastic. It has an autumnal edge to it as well because of its mellowness and its softness of fruit.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I think it's a very it's not understated. It's not a big, bold, brash wine that's that's very much sort of in your face. I think it's got a quiet sort of elegance and confidence about it. But I've just put into the chat, members, indeed, Ewan, if you're wondering what I've just put in there. I mentioned the fact that this Sancerre is sadly out of stock, and I know that a member has just said, lovely Sancerre, if only that I could buy some. I did um, before tonight, just have a little look at what else we had in stock that is similar in style. You mentioned Pouilly there, of course, another appellation across the river. Sort of, they look across the river at each other at odds and at war, in terms of that kind of vying for dominance and supremacy in the region. But the Pouilly from Domaine Seguin, the 2024 vintage, again shares quite a bit of similarity. The grapes are grown from plots that also span all three of those soil types. So you do have a wine. Yes, it's different. I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but if you like this wine or if you like the sound of this style, I would encourage that particular wine. I think it's another exceptional example. Another, if you really love that kind of very taut, mineral, very refreshing, very crisp, clean style of wine, Albariños from Galicia, Rías Baixas in Spain, or indeed Alvarinho in northern Portugal, I think are other areas that I would always recommend for that style of wine. Really refreshing, high acidity, but very round, very smooth, supple, lovely stone and orchard fruit characters.
Mm. Mark makes an interesting point in the comments that, I mean, we talk about Sauvignon Blanc, we always think Loire Valley, and we always think New Zealand, but of course Sauvignon is made elsewhere.
Yes.
The couple of areas that Mark mentions are northeast Italy, so the sort of Friuli area,
Absolutely, yeah.
and Steiermark or Styria in Austria as
Yep.
well, which is more of a minority sport, but certainly coming to the fore. And I think Sauvignon Blanc gets much maligned because of its almost commodity feel in the cheaper end of New Zealand. But actually, when you go elsewhere in New Zealand to the finer end, and you go to Italy or Austria or the finer areas of Chile, etc., you find some really really good examples of Sauvignon around. So it's not the Loire is maybe the Loire and Bordeaux are maybe the homes of the spiritual homes, but it certainly can be found in many iterations around the world.
I think when you mentioned Chile there, I think of the likes of Casablanca as a region within northern Chile rather that is a producer of very fine Sauvignon Blanc, a little more citrusy. I find those styles more generally speaking, but absolutely gorgeous. And again, if you like your Sauvignon Blancs and haven't tried any from Chile, from Casablanca, highly recommend seeking those out too.
Definitely.
Excellent.
Good stuff. I think in the looking on in the fine wine list again, there's quite a few lovely whites in there. I mean, and very often we often tend to think of fine wines as being red, as being you being your Pinot Noirs from Burgundy, being your top end Bordeaux, being your Barolos from Italy, etc. But I think when you look through our list, and I was looking at, because I'm on the verge of buying my Christmas wines. And while I always dip into my members' reserves for a case or so of the, I'm going to say decent stuff. It's all blinking decent, isn't it? But the things that I've collected on Primeur or whatever, and that are just coming into their own and into the middle of their drinking windows. I'm always looking for other things as well to complement that. And just looking through the fine wine catalogue, for me, I would say, well, the white that came to my attention was from Italy, and it's the Piero Pan Calvario. I just love Piero Pan Soave wines. So there's a real, and for me, they are the epitome of fine Italian whites. Those excellent Soaves, and I was very pleased to see that it's available in a Magnum, which from a Christmas point of view, and when the family is around, Magnums are great. Although somebody did say, what is it? A bottle is too small for one, but a bottle is too big for one, but a Magnum is too small to share. I can't remember exactly what.
One of my favourites. I thought this was a sort of a quote in the Champenois regions, but perhaps it's further afield. But one of my favourites that I've seen or heard is a Magnum is the perfect bottle size for two people if having lunch and one's not drinking.
That's absolutely.
But speaking of Magnums, look at this one for segues in. I believe the next wine, although we're tasting obviously in the sample pouch here, but I think we do have this or another from this producer in Magnum.
We do indeed. So the next wine is Jean-Marc Brocard. So this is wine number 2. The next sachet on your hymn sheet is Jean-Marc Brocard's Chablis from the Vignobles Sainte, and it's Vieilles, so old vines, more concentrated fruit generally. 2022, weighs in at £19.50 on our list, but the magnums are also available at £40 for a magnum, so pretty much just twice the price, so not overblown. And for me, Jean-Marc Brocard has always, we've followed him for a long time. Jean-Marc was originally not a vigneron at all. He was very much an agricultural engineer. That's the sort of things he was studying at university. So he was more of a tractor man than a trellis man. He even, I think he's even, if I remember rightly, he's even got a patent out for a particular trailer attachment between a tractor and some equipment out the back. So very much there. But he married his childhood sweetheart, whose dad was a vigneron and who owned some vines. And I think as a wedding present almost, he gave them a hectare of vines in Chablis. And so
Nice.
we're talking 1973. So Jean-Marc took to that and found that he was quite good at making wine, and he was very interested in that sort of thing. So he's over the time he's expanded his estate since then, and his son Julien has come on board, and since 2012 Julien has been taking the bulk, if you like, of the day-to-day running of the business. And they've now got I think there's about 180 hectares which is built from the original 1 hectare that he had. Some of these are managed, if you like, so they manage it from other. There are growers that grow only for the Brocard, but then they sort of rent it, or the Brocards rent them from these growers, and these growers still carry on working them. But a lot of them belong to them in many of the different areas of Chablis. I think we've got to always have a Chablis. So always have a Chablis on the Christmas lunch table, says somebody here. That's a very good thing. Chablis at all times in all places is a very good thing. So here we've got a map of Burgundy, but you can see that the bulk of the map, the Côte d'Or and the Mâconnais, is on the right-hand side of the central French map there, and sort of top left circled is Chablis. So it's quite a way from where we view normal Burgundy to be around the town of Auxerre, and it's a lovely area if you ever go to visit. Rolling area with the river running through it and a canal running through it as well. Brilliant area for a canal holiday. But the village of Chablis, and it is a tiny little medieval village with a few large buildings around it, which are large wineries. They've been growing grapes there since Roman times, like a lot of France. But it's up until recently. I think since climate change has come on board, it was what the French would call limitrophe, so at the limit of where you could grow wines. And I think, sorry, I'm just laughing at a comment there that I think Peter and Roger, I think Roger has drunk the whole kit already. I couldn't agree. Roger made a comment earlier saying, "I love wine." I think that's a very good qualification to be in the wine society, to be honest. But yes, so they've been. Chablis is one of those areas. It's one of those areas that I always point out to people that if you don't like Chardonnay, try some Chablis. And they say, "Oh yeah, I love Chablis. It's just Chardonnay I don't like." It's the age-old story. Those of you who are watching this are likely to know that Chablis is, of course, always 100% Chardonnay. But it's not an oaky style of Chardonnay. It's a very pure, quintessential style of Chardonnay that really, for me, if I think Chablis, it's crystalline, it's brightly citrus, it's a little bit gunflinty, what the French call silex, which is the flintiness, and it kind of all comes. It comes from the grape. It comes from the soil. The soil, as Gil alluded to earlier, is Kimmeridgian limestone, full of little seashells and fossils. It's the same if you've been to the Jurassic Coast, Lulworth Cove, Kimmeridge in Dorset, that's what it's named after, and it's that band of limestone that runs under the channel and keeps rearing its head up in France. And here in Chablis, there are outcrops of it, lovely rolling hills, similar, not dissimilar to Dorset in style, except a long way from the coast, obviously. But it's that sort of minerality in the soils. It gives that sort of mineral feel, flinty, limestoney, calcareous feel. Maybe because it's got lots of bits of shells in it and sea creatures. Maybe that's why it goes so well with oysters. Who knows? But this particular wine by Jean-Marc is it's Vieilles. The vines are around about 60 years old in these vineyards in Domaine Sainte-Claire, which is, and the vineyard itself is Malente. Now, Malente is a lieu-dit, or a given area of vineyards, a parcel of vineyards, which is on a parallel slope to one of the Premier Cru, which is Montmain. And Brocard have holdings in all over. They've got the Premier Cru in Vaucoupin, Vaux-Laurent, and Mont-de-Milieu, whereas the Grand Cru, they have Leccia and Mûre. But Malente is kind of on a parallel slope to the what did I say now? The Montmain, parallel slope to the Montmain, quite east facing. So Montmain is more southeast facing. This is more easterly facing. So it gets a lot of morning sunshine, but doesn't necessarily get the heat of the west facing. So it's very fine. The ripening takes a little bit longer. It's sort of higher up on a slope, so that it takes a long time to ripen the fruit. So there's great acidity in there, because you get cool nights when you're up on the top of the slopes. And it's just, for me, it's quintessential. There's two aromatic values to it, really. There's the flintiness, that silex that they call it, the minerality, if you like. But there's also a wonderful heart of pineapple to it. And pineapple is again and again. I've been working with Chablis for all the 26 years I've been in the wine trade. And I remember working with the wines of Domaine La Roche, Michel La Roche, and I always got pineapple from his Chablis. But even that, there's always a hint of it. I'm not talking tinned pineapple.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking so that the fresh, zesty, citrusy pineapple, but all together with that sort of, I don't know. It's just there's a linearity to it. Mm-hmm. So I was talking about the mellowness and the breadth of that Sauvignon Blanc, but actually here it's a sort of crystalline. It's a line. I like to taste in 3D, so it feels like shapes are filling my mouth. And here it's a very thin
Yeah.
dagger-like line going through. Don't know what you think, Gil.
Well, I agree. I think there's a lot of they're not power as such, but there's a lot of concentration. There's a lot of fruit. The acidity is very high, but it's incredibly well balanced with that concentration of fruit, with the overall mouth feel. It's got a wonderful. It has that linear focus, but at the same time, there's enough of a kind of broad palate coating. Sort of
I think that comes from the lees, because it's aged on the fine lees for 12 months in the stainless steel, so it doesn't see any oak at all. Mm-hmm. But it's indigenous yeast only, temperature controlled fermentation, 18 to 20 degrees. So it's all very coolly done, and then complete malolactic fermentation, which takes away all those apple-y and sort of those apple-y acids and gives a sort of, it gives it a softer acid to it. And then it's aged on those fine leads for 12 months before bottling. Yeah. I think that gives it, while it's got that crystalline feel, and wow, I'm getting a real zing down the middle of my palate there. Mm-hmm. Watering on the side, but a flavoursome zing, and down the back of the throat. But you've got, there is that pineapple-iness, there's that breadth to it. And as somebody was just saying on the chat, the value for money at £19.50, I think, is absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and the flavors are still there. I had, I didn't track how long ago I had that little sip, but it was certainly more than 30 seconds ago.
Yeah,
to a minute, and I'm still detecting, and it's not just the sensation of a flavor. I'm still detecting what that flavor is.
Yes,
I'm still getting that fruit definition, which again is that hallmark. We go back to that sense of place and that ability for the typicity
of fine wine hallmark.
Exactly. So I couldn't agree more. A region in Burgundy which we we know certain areas in particular more than others just continues to go up and up and up in terms of the price point, and the scarcity of it. The demand is far outstripping the supply.
Yes.
Somewhere like Chablis, and especially, I mean, Jean-Marc Brocard and Julien, I've been a personal fan for many, many years, and continue to be so. But equally, away from here, at the polar opposite end of Burgundy, in the Macon, you've also got great opportunities there for excellent value wines, in the likes of your Pouilly-Fuissé, Saint-Verin. These areas, I think, offer wonderful, wonderful wines. Tend to have a little bit more roundness, lower acidity, slightly more kind of those melon, less orchard fruits, a little bit more stone fruits working its way towards tropical. It's a bit warmer there, uh,
Hmm.
but again, wonderful examples of Burgundian Chardonnay.
Yeah. One thing I just wanted to point out on this one as well is that at the Wine Society, we all know that we are into our sustainability and our
Mm.
environmental impact. And since Julien took over, I remember back then in 2011, 2012, well, even before 2012, when Julien was in the process of taking over, he was given Jean-Marc gave him an area, Domaine La Boissonneuse,
Yeah.
to sort
Yeah.
of work on. And he used that almost as an experimental bed for organic and biodynamic
Mhm.
farming. And so successful was he that, in fact, across the whole estate now, everything is organic, biodynamic. I think there are, and those growers who they manage, they're converting them to that as well. So there's
Yeah.
a whole field, and they're doing a lot of that are into their biodiversity as well. It's absolutely it's because Chablis as an area, it's got little clumps and little thickets of forest, but it's not a naturally wooded area. And the plan is for the Brocards to, and I think it's 30,000 trees they're going to plant in
Mhm.
there on over their estate. Through until 2030. So you're giving biodiversity, you're giving protection from the wind, the trees do an awful lot of good with their root systems in the ground as well. So there's lots going on there. So they're very much they only came into existence in 1973, which is quite young for a lot of the Chablis producers. They're just over 50 years old now, and yeah, and I think they're definitely planning for a great future.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Lovely.
There's our Chablis.
There's our Chablis.
I'm just looking at
Excellent.
the
Well,
difference, the colour between the two, actually, the
I
Chablis and
was going to say I could only see the top of your glass, but
yes, that's
there we go. Yeah, yeah.
anyway.
Wonderful. Well, now, members, I'd like to. We did not plan the way we'd sort of flow from one wine to another, but you mentioned there about forestry and planting trees and the benefits of that in terms of protection from winds, but equally to improve the biodiversity and the ecosystem really, in the vineyards, and that beautifully flows into our third wine, which is the first of our reds. This is from Tuscany, so we're moving out of France for the first time this evening. We're in central Italy. We're in the region of Tuscany. We're in Chianti Classico, um, and we're at Castello La Leccia, which is a wonderful estate steeped in history, but in the Chianti Hills, just north of, well, about 10 miles or so, 9, 10 miles north of Siena, and about 20 miles south of Florence. Although historically it's been a kind of an outpost of the a Florentine outpost, up to the 16th century. But they're in this very forested area, densely sort of forested region here, which does create a microclimate that's very beneficial for incredible quality and biodiversity and soil health, and promoting all that, as you allude to there, that sustainability, and sustainably minded practices, which these guys in this particular estate do just as much as we would hope and want of them. So Castello de Lecce, La Leccia, it's in an ancient village, as I say. There, it's about a mile or so south of the town of Castellina. It's very high up on a hill. It's about 1,500 feet in altitude. Um, and the estate itself, there's historical records. I'll share a picture actually before. In fact, before I do that, let me move the slide across from where it was, so we get on the right one. Here we go. Their written records go back to 1077, so it's just that little bit older than than I think the rest of the producers here this evening, in terms of viticulture being on the site. But Chianti Classico, Castello, La Leccia, and we have these historical records. It was Rodolfo de Guincio rather. He acquired part of the castle, that Castello, and then because it was so strategically important, given all the disruptions, the wars between the Florence, between Siena, it was kind of distributed. The rights to the castle were distributed across several families, with 16 different owners in total. It wasn't until kind of the mid 1400s that that castle then kind of fell under the control of the Ricasoli family. And I'm going to read the quote. I wanted to say something like a lovely quote, but it's not really in terms of the content. But Andrea Ricasoli in 1529 wrote, raids and devastation that was taking place in that period. But wrote, and I quote, "Perhaps 50 Sienese soldiers came to my dwelling in Chianti called La Leccia, where they burnt all that was in the place, and 200 barrels of wine in the cellars were all spilled." So there's something I quite like about when sort of history and looking at that sort of provenance of places, that we have that kind of written archival sort of story, but of course the actual story itself is one of devastation. Not least to the fact that 200 barrels of wine were spoiled. I'm sure there are more important elements as well in terms of destruction, but it was disbanded, as I say. The Ricasoli family had it sort of from those mid 1400s. But in 1920, the Daddi family took over the running, and from that moment, for the next sort of 100 years, they continued to put their heart and soul and money into the estate, and brought it back up to its sort of heyday. This castle there with 180, I think it is, hectare, not all under vine, but 180 hectares. So they kind of brought the estate back up to its sort of shining glory. And then in 2018, they then sold. So almost at that centenary, they sold to a Swiss family, the Sonderegger family, who have again taken it the next levels and the next step. But it's a producer that we really love. There's a huge amount of attention to detail here. Their vineyards are farmed organically. They don't use any synthetic herbicides, fungicides at all. It's all about quality, but a lot of attention. So our buyer, not for Italy, but one of our buyers, Fiona Hayes, and we discussed in another event a few months ago about this kind of minimal intervention but high attention. This sort of attention to detail, allowing you as a winemaker and as a grape grower to take a bit of a back step, and that's very much what they do here. So they've got a very reduced quantity of copper and sulfur. They plant, and I'm going to show a picture actually. I think I've got it here. They have wonderful kind of cover crop and intervine plantings, again promoting biodiversity. So let me get this picture up. I'll show on the map as well. So here we are. We're right in the heart, right between Florence and Siena. We can see that kind of green-grey circled area. But here's the vineyard. You and I hope you can see that, members, as well.
Yep.
So you see these wonderful kind of rolling hills. They are very much up in those forested areas. We're looking out across the hills, but we can see that wonderful vegetation, that cover crop. They plant mustard, they plant clover and barley, which again just promotes a wonderful kind of ecosystem of biodiversity. And we see the health. Look at those vines look incredible, the health of them. And then we ultimately see that reflecting in the wine at the end. So I don't know if you've tried the wine yet, Ewan.
I've sniffed it,
You've
and
sniffed it. I
I'm
thought I
in
got
heaven.
a nice reaction when you sniffed it.
Yeah, and I'm in heaven already.
Well, you're a huge fan of Italian wine. I think Chianti in
I am
particular,
in
right?
general.
So this is a nice
Yeah.
place for you.
Mm.
But again, it's 5 different locations. They're vineyards. They're each parcel. The grapes are sorted individually. They're processed separately. Fermentation uses indigenous yeasts. They don't use cultured yeasts. And that all takes place in stainless steel tanks. Really, we're looking to preserve that wonderful, vibrant Sangiovese, which is the grape variety here, 100%. That lovely kind of sour red cherry, and that almost there's a slight herbal character as well that we get in these grapes. But yeah, I've just noted here, so it's all destemmed. There's no whole bunch pressing. And yeah, the alcoholic fermentation is in very controlled temperatures, about 26 degrees in stainless steel. There's a short kind of 10 to 12 day maceration on the skins to extract that lovely color and some tannin, as well as a great variety. Sangiovese gives us high acidity, but also quite high tannin structure as well. So they want that, but not too extreme. And then maturation is about 12 months. 8 months of that is in oak, sorry, in concrete tanks, and then the final 4 months is in French oak barrels, just to give us a lovely round, balanced character and a little of that oaky flavour as well coming through. But it does have a beautiful nose. It's got that quintessential kind of Sangiovese character to it. We've got a member here just saying, lovely wine, needs a couple of years to hit its peak, still a bit tannic. Let me give it a try. What do you think there, Ewan?
I think you're right in the tannin, but I think a good splashy decant before a meal and leave it for an hour or so just to aerate a little bit would assist greatly.
Mm.
I'm
I think
just
also coming straight after the white wines, if we are, tasting the white ones and then into the reds, those tannins
mm,
can feel a little bit firmer as we sort of recalibrate, I suppose, the palate a little bit. But you get that acidity. It's really a refreshing, you know, um, wine. It makes that kind of that salivate. It gives you that
mm.
that that water
And
sensation
with apologies to the vegetarians around, I can just I can see a wild boar racing towards my dinner plate with this. I mean, it's a beautiful
there.
wine to go with. I have to say, my very first experience of Tuscan wine, it was a Tuscan jug wine, but I was in my 20s and touring around Italy, setting up campsites for Eurocamp and campus holidays with another bunch of 20. But we went into this trattoria in a tiny little village, and I've no idea where, but somewhere in the middle of Chianti, and had this with a wild boar ragu. And the Chianti and wild boar ragu is just a match
Yeah,
made in heaven, and this was
yeah.
very much it. Delicious.
We've got a comment here. Sorry, we just tasted the Chianti with Parmesan cheese after that was recommended, and greatly improved it. Greatly
Improve the
improved the
cheese or the
quality.
Chianti.
Yeah. But I suppose that's a very good point in that food and wine. We often talk food and wine in the industry, and we often talk about it in on the road to events and in the office, and we've talked about it already plenty of times tonight. But there is real truth behind. There is real fact, I suppose, behind
Mm,
and substance behind the food and wine, and that interaction that one plays against the other. And it's more food has more of an impact on wine, I think, than wine necessarily has on the food. But it's really interesting playing with those flavors on the plate and playing with the wine, and seeing, as is the case here, when on its own, and then having it with something like Parmesan completely changes everything. Sometimes
yeah,
not necessarily for the better, but in this case, thankfully, it did. Mm.
yeah.
Like
That's
this is, the weather's turned over the last few days. And this for me, this is a really lovely wine to have with this kind of weather, where it's quite bitey, quite bracy outside. It's
mhm.
very cold. This has a lovely kind of spiced red fruit, a little black fruit in there as well, um, and a kind of warming character to it.
Mm, no,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely. We're talking a price, aren't we? 15.50. So that's kind of on the edge of that commercial price for
Mhm.
for a fine wine.
Yep.
I think for me that's I think it's slightly better than basic, and therefore the sort of the basic you might be seeing at 8, 9, £10. £15 is a bit right. I mean, I think for Peter's just saying here in the comments, it's famous an any day wine. He thinks you can a little bit more money, you can buy a much finer Chianti. And yes, I think we can
Hmm.
you can find that in a lot of things. For me, this kind of hits a flavour and tannin and acidity spot. And again, it's what you were saying earlier. It's that balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
balance all those things together. And in a couple of years, the tannins will lessen, and it'll
Mhm.
be easier to drink without food. So it'll have a different feel together. This is why you should always buy 12 bottles and then pace yourself over a period of time to
Yeah.
try the wines as it develops.
I'll have to do that. I experiment with 3 bottles. I get 3 bottles of everything, and then
Yeah, I don't have the budget to do 12
go
bottles.
go from there. No, three is about a stretch.
Yeah, no, delicious, delicious.
Excellent.
Cool. Right. Well, shall we leap across Mediterranean, the Gulf de Lyon, etc., and bypass France and head on into Spain for our next wine. So wine number 4, which is the Glorioso Reserva Rioja 2019. Again, it says that, I mean, all of these wines, if you like, from a price point of view, we are at that entry level into fine wine. This is what the whole of this pack, the idea of this pack is introduction to fine wine. So here we're talking £14.50 for this wine. Now, Glorioso is wine. They do a Crianza, they do a Reserva, they do a Grand Reserva, and they do some special wines too. This is made by Bodegas Cosme Palacio in Rioja Alavesa.
So let me bring up the map for you.
Yeah, yes, please. So here we've got a map of Rioja, and you can see the areas. So the Rioja Alavesa is the top bit. And there's me using my I'm using my cursor, but of course I'm not controlling the map, so nobody can see my cursor.
I wondered if that's what you were doing.
Yeah, the top bit round La Guardia. You're heading there up towards the Sierra Cantabria, so it's higher ground. You can see that there is a wiggly line that runs all the way through from the left hand end, and it comes through Haro and then wiggles all the way at the bottom of Alavesa, and that is the River Ebro. And the Alavesa there, from the Ebro, you go north and heading north to the Sierra Cantabrica. So throughout the Alavesa, you've got this blend of calcareous, the limestone up at the top, and then more the sort of the gravelly and the silty bits and the alluvial stuff at the bottom there next to the river. And it's that mix of soils, if you like, that and the altitude that gives arguably a finer style of Rioja at this end, in La Rioja Alta and Rioja Alavesa, a sort of finer style up this end of the although people obviously in the Rioja Baja will disagree with that, but I think a lot of the finer names that we recognize are around Logroño and La Guardia and Haro and all those areas like that. And for me Rioja Alavesa is kind of the epitome of what Tempranillo can really be like. So this is 100% Tempranillo. Unlike lots of people will mix your Tempranillo, your Matuelo, Graciano, and other things, Garnacha, and other things beside within the Rioja, whereas Tempranillo is usually the majority partner in those blends. But here it is majority. We're talking 100% Tempranillo. I was privileged to go out to the bodega with our then Spanish buyer Pierre Mansour to blend the Society's Rioja, because Bodegas Palacio have for a long time been making the Society's Rioja Crianza, which is one of our top 5 selling wines and has been for donkey's years. And they know members' palates very, very well. This one, the Glorioso, is not a blend specially for us, but it is still 100% Tempranillo. And so you might think, well, what's different to this? What's different about this wine to any other? They do treat it differently. I mean, the whole estate is run slightly differently. Rather than owning their vineyards, they control. They've got a network of contract growers around about 225 hectares, but they're the contract growers, and the growers grow according to what Bodegas Palacio want them to do. All of these growers are in the Alavesa. The winery has a capacity of about 13,000 barrels, which is a heck of a lot of barrels when you go into that barrel room. I can tell you from experience. But these ones, it's slightly different because everyone says, "Oh, we blend it. We use French oak, or we use American oak, or we use a mixture of the two." That's true, but these guys, they've got different size vats to wooden and stainless steel so each vat corresponds to a parcel of land. So one vat might be, I don't know, 2,000 hectoliters. Another one might be 300. Another might be a huge one. We're all with grapes from different parcels. But then when they put it into the oak to mature, these wines, they put it into American oak for 6 months. Then they take it all out of the American oak and then stick it into French oak for 6 months. So rather than being a blend of the barrels, as it often is, and they blend it all together, they blend the wine, they stick it into one oak, and they take it out of that oak and stick it into another one, and it just creates a different feel. I mean, it's a conversation point, but I think it does create a different feel to this. Right at the start, when somebody first sniffed it, they were going, "Wow, coconut, vanilla, and all that sort of thing," and it has got those. But the coconutty is what comes from the American oak, and the vanilla side is kind of what comes from the French oak. So you really do have that blend of oak that's really there. But there's a lovely fruitiness coming through. I haven't even tasted it yet, and it's just absolutely pervading.
But as you've been speaking there, I've seen these comments coming through, and I think the members, you're absolutely spot on. Again, I've not tried the wine yet either. I could smell this wine all night long. I think it's got that wonderful aroma. But yeah, coconuts, vanilla, licorice. It's got, I completely agree. It's got this herby, sort of that fennel. It's got something herbaceous in there, or herbal rather than herbaceous. And again, it's a wine that when I smell that, I'm instantly thinking Rioja. For that coconut in particular, the coconuts, the vanilla, the fruit. But it's an interesting point I find always with Rioja, and I'm often having the conversation about the differences between Crianza and Reserva and Grand Reserva that you mentioned earlier. Because, of course, we see those naturally go up in price as we move through those tiers. But the reason for that price difference is, in no small part of the time, each of those wines are spent in barrel. They get progressively longer. The wine that goes ultimately into the Reservas and then the Grand Reservas, they have to have more complexity, more concentration, arguably the better fruit, because it can withstand that longer period of time, or indeed the more concentrated fruit, higher acidity, higher tannin, higher everything. So it can withstand the several years, in the case of Grand Reserva in particular, in barrel. But again, going back to the individual preferences, it doesn't mean that Grand Reserva is necessarily, to us as an individual, the better option of those three. It depends entirely on how you like to drink your red wines. A Crianza is going to have far more sort of primary fruit, as we call it, but fresher red and black fruit characters in there, more of a fruitier style, softer. Whereas the Grand Reservas will have no fresh fruit. It'll all be dried fruits, your prunes, your raisin, your fig. It'll have more of a nutty character, mushroom, leather, that vanilla, that coconut. And so if you like one, then aim for that. If you prefer the fresher style, prefer the dried fruit and all of those extra elements, that development, you go Grand Reserva. I really love the Reserva because you get a little bit of both worlds. You start to see some of that development, but there's still quite a bit of fresh fruit character in there as well. And this one's got plenty of complexity.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's lovely. It's lovely, and there is those flavors of licorice and things like that coming through as well. Those sort of tertiary aromas just beginning to sort of to pop in.
Yeah, both fruit and savory flavors. Exactly. It's that sweet spot. And I think for me personally, and it is a very personal comment, but the Reserva Rioja is where I go to, and I kind of my flag in that particular.
I think Rioja Crianza is my barbecue Rioja.
Mm-hmm.
Reserva and onwards is my dinner party Rioja.
Yeah.
Get me,
If
only I had the budget to be able to do that all the time. No, but it's definitely a case of horses for courses. And again, I think at this price point, I think £14.50 is a fantastic value for money point for a wine of this complexity and this deliciousness. It's potentially a little more ready to drink than the Chianti. It's more it's nearer its sweet spot, but only a pound difference between them. But no, I think this is a top notch, and they do make they do Grand Reserva. In fact, we do sometimes do that Grand Reserva too, and the Crianza.
The Crianza is delicious, actually.
It is. And as I say, we make they make the Society's Rioja Crianza as well. A fascinating process watching Roberto, the winemaker, and whoever the society buyer happens to be at the time. Roberto knows members' palates inside out. He knows all the previous blends that he's done, and he'll present 40 different different cuvées they've spent different times in oak. They're from different plots and everything, and then we'll sort of pick and mix and blend. It's absolutely fascinating. So this one is a lot more, if you like, it's a lot more simple to make, in that there's given plots all the time, but it's an art. There's an art to Rioja blending, and although it's 100% Tempranillo, it is a blend. It's a blend of different vineyards. Some that are lower down, warmer, sort of broader fruit. Some that are higher up, cooler. They've got more limestone in the soil rather than more clay in the different areas. So it's a beautiful thing to behold by sight in the vineyards and on the palate tonight.
Excellent. Now there are two questions, Ewan.
Yes.
Let me first, we've got, so I know in the slide that we just showed, it showed that this wine was low stock, but I believe from what I'm seeing here on the comment that the 2019 may now have just gone out of stock, which is the wine that we're tasting. We are showing the 2020, I think that's coming in or is now already in. Have you tried it? I don't know.
I haven't tried the 2020 yet, no.
No, I've not either. So the question was, what's our view on it? We've not tried, but I can say from sort of several vintages that we've had over the years of this, and indeed there are other wines, there is typicity, yes, from vintage to vintage, but there's a consistently high quality, consistent high quality throughout. So I can't comment personally on exactly what the 2020 is like, but I know that the quality will be very high. I don't know if that helps at all with that question. But then the second question here is, what's the difference between a barbecue wine and a dinner party wine?
That's interesting. I'm Canadian. What's the difference between a barbecue wine and dinner party wine? Yes, so thanks, Tim. I think probably price, to be honest, but also it's for me. It's a barbecue wine is one you're out there with friends. You're not thinking too much about the wine, so you're enjoying it nonetheless. You'd certainly pick it out if it was dud, but it's a pleasurable wine that just goes with the food, goes with the occasion. A dinner party wine, if I'm sitting down inside, to me it becomes a little more cerebral. So I'm thinking about the wine a little more as we're sitting down. It's the environment, and therefore I think if I had a more cerebral wine, a more complex wine outside, I don't think I'd appreciate it with all the strong barbecue flavors. Whereas with a dinner party, you can select your flavors at a bit more. You've got a bit more time to think about it. That's what I'd say.
Excellent answer.
Yeah. Everyone, but again, it's fine wine. Everybody has a different answer to that. No. But yeah. But I think the difference also to barbecue wine, if you're Canadian, you generally got that continental climate. There is a long barbecue season, and so a lot of dinner parties in the summer are like that. In the UK, if you're lucky, you might catch a couple of barbecues, but every other social event is a dinner party because it's raining.
We have barbecues in the rain.
Although not this summer. I know somebody who barbecues as their Christmas dinner, whatever the weather. There we go. Yeah.
Good. Right, well, so I think we're on to the final two wines. We come back to France to finish the tasting off. So my final wine and the penultimate wine of the tasting is the Côtes-du-Rhône. Let me share the slide. So wine number 5 is the Côtes-du-Rhône from Cros de la Mûre. This is a wine that is made by Eric Michel, as we can see here. I'll go on to his perfectionist grower, Massif d'Auchal, in a few moments, but very much is a perfectionist, as we will see. But a wonderful example of a very concentrated, very powerful, very rich, very intense Côte d'Rhône. There are such a range of styles under this particular appellation. So it's quite a difficult one to sort of nail down, I suppose, a style, because there is everything in Côte d'Rhône from the quite sort of medium-bodied, lower acidity, lower tannin, very smooth, very fruit-driven, Grenache dominant, vibrant red fruit profile, possibly with a little bit of black fruits coming from Auvergne and from Syrah, right the way through to wines like this that have all that power and all that strength and all that concentration. So I suppose in Côte d'Rhône, there's an element of producer pick, or in our case, very much following the comments made by our buyer Fiona, who goes and obviously tastes these wines and brings these in, and has wowed me with a number of the wines that she's been bringing in over the last few months. This being one of them. So let me bring up the map of where we are. So the Rhone Valley is a vast area. I've only got the map for the southern Rhone here because that's largely where the vast majority of Côtes-du-Rhône vines are, or rather grapes that ultimately go into Côtes-du-Rhône. It's not something that's exclusively southern Rhone, so we can have fruit from the north go under wines that are labelled as such, just that the vast majority does come from the slightly flatter, bit warmer regions in the south. And we're right here in the Massif d'Auchard, as we see, so just north of Orange, and indeed then north of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Eric Michel, he created his winery in 1989, but his family had been producing wine since the 1920s, largely for family consumption. It wasn't a commercial operation. It was growing grapes and making wine for the family. Um, Here he is. This is Eric, but very much that kind of meticulous attention to detail right from the off. And he was one of these sort of new wave, if you will, younger generation, incredibly talented winemaker, um, and really focuses on precision, quality tending of the vines. It's organically farmed, and a very, very high attention to detail in the vineyards. Just wanted to show pictures of what we're talking here, these kind of bush vine on these really quite stony, light coloured soils. And I believe Ewan is at the Massif behind us. Have I got that?
Massive du Chaud, yeah.
Got that right. So again, a bit like the Chianti, this region is very high in elevation. It's a very forested area, historically incredibly important to the region, not just viticulturally, although very much is. Wine has been, grapes have been grown here. Wine has been made in here for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, in fact. Um, but it's heavily forested, densely forested here, and so yeah, organically farmed, biodynamic kind of principles to a degree, but certainly with that sustainability in mind. Um, I can see a question just very quickly here from Tim. Mourvèdre, yes, there is some Mourvèdre in here. It's roughly about 15%. The majority is Grenache, Grenache Noir. It's about 60% Grenache, 20% Syrah, 15 Mourvèdre, and then the final 5% is Sancerre. Um, and there's a lot of artistry. We've talked about blends here, but blends from different plots, but of the same variety in the Sancerre, in the Chablis, in the wine just a moment ago, as well. In Rioja with that Tempranillo, we've seen 100% Sangiovese as well. This is the first blend that we've come across tonight. And there's a real artistry and skill here, just as much as there is from blending plots, in blending all these varieties to give us that balance and that overall complexity where no one grape is trying to oversee the others or dominate. But a lot of power and a lot of concentration here. Um, he's got 17 hectares under vine. There's a little parcel they have in Gigondas and an even smaller amount in Châteauneuf-du-Pape itself as well. Um, but it's all manual weeding. Everything is done by hand, all the tillaging by hand. No chemicals are used at all. It's all natural products, organically farmed. All the treatments are natural. And yeah, you get such a concentrated, big, rich, intense wine. I think someone here, the Côte d'Or is almost, or is a big, sorry, almost Chateau Neuf kind of wine. Completely agree. It has the,
I can almost smell my Sunday lunch in that.
yeah,
So
very
as well as
big.
this rich fruit and licorice thing going through, there's almost a meaty, bloody kind of side to it. A
Yep,
real
yep.
sort of savoury edge.
Hmm. And it's wow, wow. So the soils here, there's a lot of limestone, lots of sand, stone as well. Some pockets are quite sandy and clay, but essentially there's a lot of lack of nutrients. So there's a naturally low yielding vines that then with that meticulous attention to detail, um, and canopy management and thinning that Eric does, he ends up again lowering those yields even more. So you get low yields of very concentrated, very high quality fruit, um, that we then see going into these wines. And in 2019, this vintage very much going to put a lot of effort into this particular wine and put all this amazing fruit into producing this. It's 14.5%. It's in terms of, we haven't mentioned alcohols really this evening, but in that respect, it's, I think, the biggest wine. Some 14 in here, but yeah, dark berry fruits, particularly blackberry, some charcoal, absolutely charcoal smoked bacon. It has, we were talking barbecues. This has a kind of barbecue
Yeah.
feel to it. Yeah. Are you familiar? Do you know the wine? Is this the first time you're trying?
I've had previous iterations of it.
Yeah.
I have to say this does fit in with the house style, but for me this is particularly special. I think there's a complexity to it because you've got that fruit and you've got that savoury edge and you've got it's what is it, 6 years old.
Mhm.
But some of those tertiary characters, those licoricey and leisury things are coming in. Daniel's asking if there are any tips on finding a good Côtes-du-Rhône because there are so many on the market. I think trial and error, Daniel, trial and error. I mean, it's a question. I think follow the producer first
Yep.
of all. So if you do find a good producer or two or three, then by all means stick with them.
Yeah.
One of the ways that when we're buying our wines, we'll follow a producer, but producers will also tell us who's doing a good job in the area as well. So yeah, I think it is a question of that. I wouldn't tell people to stick to one producer. I think you need to try around about, but with every wine region, you're always going to find one that suits your palate. But it is pretty much trial and error at first, I think, rather than that.
I do think as well, 100% agree. It's quite exciting and interesting to have a little bit of trial and error and try a few different wines as well. But following the producer, I think, is key for Côte d'Or, for the Southern Rhone and indeed the Northern Rhone as well. Just as we touched upon with Chablis and Burgundy, is also very key to kind of follow the producer. But if you have a producer there that's well known for, let's say, particular individual appellations like your Châteauneuf du Pape or your Vaccarat, Gigondas, Côte-Rôtie to the north, etc. If they're known for producing high quality wines there, and that's where a reputation is, their Côte d'Orones are going to be, the quality and the attention to detail is going to be high for their entire range. So they would be a good place to
You
start.
take something like the Northern Rhone, Guigal, for
Yeah,
example, who makes
yeah,
excellent wines from all over the Northern Rhone. But the
yeah,
Guigal Côte-du-Rhône, I think, is always a snip.
yeah,
So from that point of view, I think also if you have a preferred grape variety, so if you like Syrah over others, or if you prefer more the sort of more gutsy Mourvèdre, or if you like the sort of the Sancerre side of things, just take a look on the back of the bottle and see
mm,
what the majority grape is there, and then you're probably pretty sure that you're going to prefer what if you've got a choice of two or three in front of you, then
yeah,
you're going to prefer one over the other simply because it's got your favorite grapes in. So there's different ways of doing that.
yeah,
Different
yeah.
ways.
And this, yeah, I love my Syrah. So this, Eric's got quite a high proportion of Syrah vines that he tends, and this are at 20%. It might not seem like an awful lot, but in Côte d'Or, 20% Syrah is a relatively high percentage. And perhaps that's part of the reason why I really enjoy this wine, because it has that black fruit, that slight blueberry alongside the blackberries, and a little black pepper as well,
Mm, mm,
lift. And there's something slightly floral. There's a little violet sort of character coming through just at the back there.
mm-hmm.
But it keeps opening up, I think, over the last few minutes. Yeah. But food wise, for me, this has lots of power, lots of tannin. It's wonderfully integrated, but lots of tannin, lots of acids and concentration. So this needs food that have a lot of flavor,
Mm,
whether it be meat or otherwise. I think protein will help sort of taper down some of that tannic structure, but it definitely needs a food that's packing its own punch.
yeah, I see what you mean about the violets as well. That's really
Yeah.
coming through now. It reminds me a little bit. There's a wine in central Italy called Lacrima Christi,
Hmm.
and there's which is very Parma violety, and I've just got an edge of that to it as well. But
Yeah.
that's just it's brilliant. It's the complexity of any blend which
Well,
really
not the
lends
powers of
itself.
persuasion. I've said it now, so you're thinking
I
it.
know. Well, I know it's always like that. I remember one of the first times. I think it was one of my first days in the wine trade years ago, and I said to someone, "Oh, I'm getting rhubarb and bubblegum." I think it was a Beaujolais at the time, rhubarb and
Yep.
bubblegum, and someone says, "Rhubarb? God, you're right." But they'd never thought about it before. But you're right, just putting that into that. But again, everybody's got. I think there's no wrong way or right way of describing a wine either. Everybody's got their own vocabulary that means something to them. So
Yep.
even if you think rhubarb in a wine, don't be ridiculous. It's fine for me. So go ahead
Yeah.
and do
Yeah.
that.
Brilliant.
Well, I'm looking at the time. It's probably time to come on to
Gosh, yes.
our final wine, actually, which again is a blend. So it's the second blend, if you like, blend of grape varieties. and we're going to Bordeaux. So some people will feel like they're coming home in tasting this wine, and yet this is Bordeaux with a twist for me. This is the Chateau Fourcas-Borie from Listrac in the Médoc, 2016. 2016 was an excellent vintage, underrated at the time, but I think things are really, it was kind of in the shadow of 2005, 2009, 2010, but 2016 is really coming into its own. As it matures, and we're 9-10 years on now. So this is it's owned by the Borie family of Ducourbeau-Cailloux, and it's for me this is just it's absolutely at its peak at the moment. The estate you'll see here on the map, Listrac, is right in the it's the southern end of the Médoc. I'm pointing to it. You can't see me pointing on the side. It's down there.
Let me get the point.
That's all right. It's the you see where it's circled there, southern end of the Médoc, but in the heart. So it's away from the Gironde estuary, a bit close. It's about 25 kilometers from the Atlantic Ocean. That sort of distance there, 25k, about 3 kilometers from the Gironde. So it's got the maritime influence from the when it blows from a westerly direction. They say you can smell the ocean. When it blows from an easterly, I guess you can smell the tidal estuary as well from the Gironde. So it is quite a sort of maritime feel. It's the weather down there is affected, and the microclimate is affected by the water. Also, it's on. I mean, nothing is very high. If you've visited the Médoc, you'll know that it's fairly flat with lumps, basically, and those lumps are glacial and alluvial gravels that cause little mounds and hills. Listrac is on a couple of those mounds and hills. It used to be the Borie family, Ducourbeau-Cailloux, took it over. It used to be called Fourcas-Dumont. In 2009, when the Bories took it over, they changed the name. And Listrac is in the middle of the Haut-Médoc, where you saw there. Around half of the 30 hectares of the vines are on the hilltops of Moulin-du-Bourg and Fourcas, so two of the gravel bumps, if you like. And the vines here have an average age of about 30 years, so kind of par for the course. They're not ridiculously young, they're not old, but they're kind of at their productive peak, if you like, that sort of 25 to 40 years old. Now the Listrac is at about it's very high for Médoc. It's about 45 meters above sea level, about 150 feet, which is quite high on there, quite exposed. Listrac means edge, as in the edge of where you can grow wine in that area. It comes from the word lisière, which is like a hedgerow or a border, and it's absolutely it's a lovely area. There's two little hamlets, Fourcas and Trie. Half the soil is gravel on a clay base, as I mentioned, and the rest is clay with a little bit of flint on a limestone base. And it's that limestone base which is really interesting in this area, because right bank, you automatically think Cabernet Sauvignon with a bit of Merlot and maybe a bit of Cabernet Franc and some Petit Verdot. But sorry, left bank, you think all that. Right bank, you're thinking Merlot, Cabernet Franc. Right bank, you're thinking Cabernet Sauvignon, maybe a bit of Cabernet Franc and other stuff. But here, it's predominantly Merlot here on this estate, because they've got the clay on the limestone as well as the gravel. Around about the general recipe for the blend is about 70% Merlot and 15 each of Cab Sauv and Petit Verdot. In this particular iteration, the 2016, it's 68% Merlot, 21% Cabernet Sauvignon, and 11% Petit Verdot. And the wine spends 12 months in oak, only 20% of which is new, and 80% is 1 year old. And I think you can feel that that difference. So it's claret, or it's left bank claret, but not as we know it, Jim. It's really quite special for me. Yeah, you get the sort of plummy flavors. You get the black cherry that you might get from Merlot. You get a little bit of the sort of cedarwood, the pencil sharp shavings kind of thing coming on from the Petit Verdot, and then of course you get your cassis fruit from the Cabernet Sauvignon as well. But as a blend, I think it's delicious.
Yeah. I don't know. It feels a bit like a coming home, as you said, to Bordeaux.
Mm, I think it's delicious. I think it's I'm just looking at what the winery says it goes with. So, so these are the words of Bruno Bory. He says, "This is an area I feel paternal about, perhaps because it deserves extra attention and it replays so generously. If it were a person, it would be a ribald Gaston Medoc, greedy, joyful, and Epicurean. The food is simple but spectacular: ceps and chanterelle, poultry and game, stews and confit, venison, woodcock, wild boar. So it's got that autumnal feel about it, and I think
Yeah.
there's a freshness to it, but there's a plumminess to it from that Merlot fruit as well.
Hmm.
But it's in stark contrast. When we were talking about the order that we were going to taste these wines in, we came
Yeah.
up with our own order and then said, well, hold on a minute, because we've got this is the order that the case comes in, and therefore this is the order that we put the box in. So that's the order we tasted it in the box. And I was a bit worried about whether this one would
Yeah.
hold its own after the Côtes-du-Rhône, but actually I think it does, because it's so entirely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
And
that
you're
right?
right. It's fresh. It has energy. It's got vivacity, but it's spicy. It's Christmassy. I know we
Mm,
mentioned about this being a great Christmas wine, but I get these lovely kind of I don't know, cooking baking spices, but these sort of
mhm.
oak grain spice as well. It has that Merlot really shines through,
Yeah.
with the plumminess and the sort of black cherries and the black currant.
I
But
mean, Matthew, our buyer, says in the notes, at its peak this Christmas, this is the perfect accompaniment to your Christmas lunch, and he recommends decanting it. And I think that's right, because it's lovely, and the tannins are still a little bit
Mhm.
chewy. I think with a nice decant, but there's enough fruit flavour in there and enough different fruit flavours and complexity to match with your trimmings. It's
Yeah,
interesting. I don't normally go Bordeaux with my turkey, but this year I
no.
might.
Mhm.
I
But
normally
then
go.
to
I
talk,
normally go Rioja, Zinfandel,
yeah,
and that sort of thing. But actually, that this could sway me.
it's yeah, yeah. But there's a question here about the Listrac about this wine. You know, perhaps not quite ready yet. Still got a little bit more development. Obviously, that's from a personal
Yeah, but that's why I was
standpoint.
saying
But
the decanting, I think, would
yeah,
would would help in that instance if you're going to
um,
drink it now.
but for you, this wine. I mean, I'm tasting this wine thinking, yes, it's already seen a lovely amount of age. It's almost 10 year.
Hmm.
But it can still continue for a few more years as well and develop. I love it in this place it's in right now. But what do you think, in the next 2, 3 years? How
Yeah,
do you
well, I
see the
think
progression?
a little when we were discussing the others, we felt that the Rioja and the Côte du Rhône were ready to drink, and maybe the Chianti needed a little bit more
Mm,
time. And I think I'm feeling similar about this Listrac as I was about the Chianti.
yeah,
That there's enough tannin there that it's certainly going to last, and there's some great acidity. It's certainly going to last a good few years yet. I think we say 29 or 30 or something like that, and we're notoriously conservative with our drink dates at the Wine
yeah,
Society. So I think that's I think yes, decant it now, it'll be great, but 2, 3, 5 years time, it's still going to be great. It's lovely.
yeah,
As I said, 2016 is increasingly proving to be a very special vintage. I know that our
mhm.
previous Bordeaux buyer, Tim Sykes, agrees with that. I know he's told me on many occasions about how 2016 was fantastic. I think on the back of this wine, I'm inclined to agree.
We've got a comment here actually from Emma, which I completely agree. You've inspired us for our Christmas lunch with the Bordeaux, either Christmas Day or Boxing Day. Cold cuts and serious enjoyment in this lovely wine. Yeah, if this is not for Christmas Day itself, I think this is a perfect Boxing Day. Open this, decant it in the morning, let it breathe for a few hours, or maybe sort of early afternoon, and then have it with your cold cuts with
Yeah,
gammon or with something along those lines. I don't know. I tend to not quite on Boxing Day, but like to make lots of different iterations from the leftover turkey, and I think this would go with a few that I've got in my head, a few
yeah,
in my mind. But a wonderful wine. And a lovely sort of way to finish. And members, my apologies as I look at the time and see we've gone over our hour and 15, but no, thank you all very very much. I'm seeing the Rioja and the Côte d'Rône popular. The Chablis was our favorite, closely followed by Rioja. I think I saw one. Our favorite was the most expensive, which I guess is how it should be from one here. But yeah, it's great to see. Chianti's still best in terms of length. Yeah, lovely to see lots of different wines getting those ticks.
Yeah. So we're just as by way of an advert, and some of you I know are already coming. Well, our next online tasting, or my next online tasting, because I'm not sure Gil's going to be there.
Mm.
You may be watching, but me and Sarah Knowles, MW, our Italian buyer, in the middle of January, when we all need cheering up, we have a Barolo online tasting with a tasting pack. It's just prior to our launch of the 22 vintage of I think it's of the Barolos on Primeur, and we'll be showing a whole host of 2018 wines to show how they're looking at the moment. So if you fancy that, take a look online, and we'll be only too happy to see you there on that evening.
Absolutely. And I am 100% going to be buying a pack and joining that one.
Excellent.
Will not miss that at all. But members, thank you very, very much for your time this evening. Great to talk about these wines, taste them alongside you tonight. Ewan, as ever, thank you for your time, your expertise, your company. And yes, until the next one, have a great evening and a great weekend.
Cheers all. Bye.
Thank you.